I know that the level-headed people that watch this channel aren't those that are saying that Xavi Ball is dead and buried. Where is it? We can't find it. But I know, you know, Xavi knows, the players know that today against Eintracht Frankfurt, we didn't see Barca's best. But a 1-1 result on the road in that kind of atmosphere and 90 minutes of figuring out their opponent for the second leg, I might eat crow on this later, but just like those first legs against Napoli and Galatasaray when they were also even, I'm not that worried that Barcelona shouldn't be the heavy favorites to take care of business at the Camp Nou for the return leg. But unfortunately, and a little fortunately, we still have to dwell on the 90 minutes that we just went through, for better or worse. So here, without further ado, are the 5 headlines from Barcelona's 1-1 draw with Eintracht Frankfurt. There are definitely positives to end with, but we have to start at the beginning of this match with headline number 1, Barca's slow start. Now, when a team does have a slow start, as Barca did today, because it's fair to certainly say that they did, that probably extended through the first half, but I'm really focusing on that first 10 minutes or so. There are multiple reasons why a team starts a game slow. There's always questions as to why they didn't come out swinging. Was it the atmosphere, the manager got his tactics or personnel wrong, the mentality, just some unlucky mistakes? I'm not sure what it was, but sometimes you do have to give credit to your opponent, and I'm going to take the out here on that. It might be a bit of a cop-out, but I think Eintracht Frankfurt, who have been a middle of the road, they're fine in the Bundesliga this season. They give up about as much as they score, and as I've said, they've been fine. They're a team that has taken it to Bayern Munich. They've had some good matches, and they've actually done well against the giants, if you will, of the Bundesliga, but their consistency has waned. In this kind of match, in this kind of atmosphere in the Europa League against Barcelona, you know, their social media accounts were tweeting all week about how they weren't afraid of Barca. And then their players, I know the players don't run the social media, but the players backed up what Eintracht Frankfurt as a club had represented all week. That they were not afraid of the Catalans, especially at home. And they took it right to Barcelona from the opening whistle, and you have to give some credit to them. Oddly enough, it was Barca who did get the early chance via Ferran Torres. He missed that one. And then it was some mistakes at right back from Araujo with his distribution that led to a number of Frankfurt chances within the first 5 minutes. Djibril Sow misses a chance from straight away just about a minute later in the 6th or 7th minute. And then Gabi cut out another cross in the 10th minute that could have led to something. And that malaise that Barcelona were dealing with, that extended throughout the entire first half. And while I did mention Araujo's distribution mistakes, for those who've been following along for a while, you know that other teams in the Liga have been allowing him, when he's been the right center back, that being Araujo, to have to beat them with that pass or the dribble. But Frankfurt wasn't doing that. They were being honest with their press. It was a medium block, and they were giving the same pressure to Araujo as they were on the other side to Alba. But they were just trying to bang everything down that right side, which we'll get to in a second. Because in hindsight, I don't think Araujo's distribution errors at the beginning were why Barca had such a slow start, because they managed to get through that without conceding a goal. They managed to live with it, and as I said, Frankfurt weren't pressing necessarily just on Araujo, where they were going to capitalize on that. And Araujo did a good enough job defending every time, and Piqué, Eric Garcia, Alba, Gabi, Pedri, and Busquets, that entire unit, well, they hit the brakes, code red, they got back every time they needed to in that first half. So Barcelona were able to, and here's where I give the compliment, they were able to survive on a day, especially in that first half, when it just wasn't their day. They weren't ready to go, the passing wasn't great, it wasn't crisp, and I thought Frankfurt defensively had a really good game plan. I want to thank OneFootball for sponsoring this video. OneFootball is the app I use to keep myself up to date on all things FC Barcelona, everything I need to know, as well as check on every other team that Alemany could be scouting right now for a big summer transfer window. With a custom-tailored homepage, stay up to date with breaking news, live scores, and even transfer news. While on the go, you can check with matches in live time and watch videos afterwards. Use the link in the description for a free download of OneFootball on Android or iOS to put all of your football in one place. And you'll help out a tiny Barca channel too. Thanks to OneFootball again for sponsoring this video. Now back to the Barca business. 2 is defense weekend because things in that first half did go from bad to worse. With Piqué going out for Langley, there were certainly more question marks of that back line. Eric Garcia, I think it's going to be years, maybe hoping months, but maybe years before all Kool-Aid say, hey, that guy can do a job defensively. I thought he was solid today, maybe even more than solid. But again, Eric Garcia isn't the guy that you're going to say, hey, that's our number one defender, center back on that back line, especially when Araujo is stuck out wide having to do a job on the right side. So Langley coming in, I have to be honest, Langley, he was not at fault for the goal, and I think Eric Garcia covered for him well, so that did minimize some of the positioning errors that he had. To me, those positioning errors and even some distribution errors are indicative of a player that has not played almost at all this season. And so he does just enough in this moment. Also with Piqué out, some of the organization for Barca on set pieces was gone. You could clearly see it. There was no penalty near the end of the first half, but it was still a dangerous moment. Busquets got the ball first, and thank goodness for VAR. So Barcelona, especially in that first half once Piqué went out, they had to settle down, they had to figure things out. And again, I think they did that, taking the 0-0 into the first half break. Because I know it feels like Barca should be up at the half, but not in this case. Frankfurt were the better team, and they should have been up at the half. 3 is attacking Barca's right side. Once again, not taking anything away from Barcelona having a poor performance, but Eintracht Frankfurt do deserve some credit for having a pretty consistent game plan, and one that they've stuck to. Barcelona will talk about their formula later about how they get their goals, but the way that Eintracht Frankfurt does attack their opposition is down that left side. It had nothing to do with Araujo, because again, if you're the other team and you're saying, do we want to attack Jordi Alba defensively, or do we want to attack Ronald Araujo defensively, who's done the job on Vinicius Jr., and he's put other wingers in his pocket on that sideline before. But Eintracht weren't afraid. They wanted to play their game more than they were willing to make those sacrifices for their opposition. So Kostic, over and over and over again, he was given the ball on switches, even on the same line, sometimes overlapping, sometimes strong-siding it. So that left side for Eintracht Frankfurt, that's where they put their bodies, that's where they put their focus, and they did have some success, even against Araujo. And I'm not ready yet to take that extra step and start to wonder about some of the questions that have been brought up this week with Araujo. It's a good news here that he's probably going to be re-signing very, very shortly. It seems like both parties have agreed on him taking the salary he did. Barca came up a little bit. Their party went down. That's what a negotiation is if a player wants to stay at a club and the club wants to have him. So it's all going to work out for the better. But it does bring up the question that if Mazraoui is apparently heading to Bayern due to high salary demands, actually similar demands to Araujo, questions about Araujo as a future right back if Dest can't stay healthy have certainly popped up. Maybe not future, but at least for next season. That's going to be a real question. Interestingly enough, the goal by Knauf doesn't come down Barcelona's right side and Eintracht Frankfurt attacking that left side. It comes off a set piece. And I don't really have anybody in particular to blame. That, yeah, you've got to get your midfield out to that ball quicker, but sometimes, again, I'm going to give credit to the opposition. That was just a fantastic hit by Knauf. I don't think there's much Ter Stegen could have done with it, and I don't think anybody could even blocked it or got in the way unless their positioning was a little bit farther out. But that was a deep, long-range missile, and sometimes you got to tip your hat to a guy that's come up through Borussia Dortmund. He's on loan, and he certainly is a player who multiple clubs in the Bundesliga kind of believe in, enough to give him a chance in this kind of circumstance, and he rewarded them for the faith. 4 is when things get sloppy, there's Gabi. If I'm going to give out any compliments from Barcelona's performance in that first half, I'm definitely going to narrow in on Gabi here. When things are sloppy, he still does a job and gets involved. He can play beautiful when everybody's clicking and the ball is moving well, and he can also play when it looks like Barca are playing like a Segunda Division side. Gabi was kind of being asked to become that main midfield option, which is a bit too much for him. Because again, a credit to Eintracht Frankfurt, Djakic staying with Pedri, marking him almost out of the game, something that we've seen bigger names be unable to do in recent weeks. He only allowed Pedri to touch the ball 13 times in the first half, and when Pedri finally did get on the ball in the second half, it led to a red for Tuta. Pedri is the guy in midfield for Barcelona. Busquets has his job as well. Gabi, or we saw in the second half De Jong, they're that third option. They can be that variable. They can be that wild card that makes Barca's midfield superior to their opposition. And so again, it was odd. It wasn't that Pedri was even having a bad game. It's just Eintracht Frankfurt did a really good job against him. And that is maybe me being a Barcelona apologist, but I was still impressed with Gabi. He's got that fight. He's got that desire. And as long as he can keep his yellow cards down, which he has done under Xavi Hernandez, as long as he can keep those down and stay on the field, he's going to be an impact player, even if he's not one of Barcelona's first choice 3 midfielders for the rest of this season. And that leads us to number 5, sticking to the formula. When games go poorly, it's really hard to find those through lines. Not everything makes sense from start to finish. Because I thought Gabi and Adama Traore were Barcelona's, maybe arguably their 2 best players in that first half. Adama Traore, I know I didn't talk about him yet. He wasn't the difference maker, but he was 8 for 8 on his dribbles, and I thought he was releasing the ball well and making things happen, even if it didn't lead to the final ball. I mean, that is the story of Adama Traore's career, but here we are. He'd been sitting on the bench for a little while now. Dembele had gotten his turn, and again, Adama stepped up in a moment when he was given the start, I thought. But when they came off, that being Gabi and Adama Traore, Barcelona just looked like they were back to their regular whatever they've been doing. Yeah, it wasn't full smash-mouth football, but Frankie de Jong certainly does something to this team in the midfield, and Dembele, again, certainly does something on that right wing. De Jong in particular brought a balance and a calm to Barca in possession. And that calm in possession just meant that Barcelona had more possession in the final third for Eintracht Frankfurt. And they became the aggressors in that second half. Right around the 60th, 70th minute, right when that goal was scored, Barcelona were pressing. They were creating issues for Eintracht Frankfurt and not allowing them to get out of their own half. So with more Barca bodies forward, a crossfield ball to Dembele, who once again makes a difference. De Jong holds it up well, close control to Ferran Torres, and Barca do score what I call a Barca goal. Torres on the finish. And that's another big goal for Torres that we're going to talk about tomorrow on the pod. I'll tell you that much. And I've got one of those guys, for those who've been recently listening to the podcast for the last 2 or 3 months, we have a Ferran Torres apologist on with us tomorrow, so that'll be a little bit of fun. Who I won't apologize for tonight, though, and I again don't like to be critical of the referees, but he wasn't great. I'm hoping that in the return leg, the ref, and this is both sides. I don't think Barca were hard done by. I think Eintracht Frankfurt were hard done by. I think Barca were hard done by. And the one major decision, that being the VAR decision, was the right choice. So I think both teams kind of get out of this one, regardless of how good or bad the ref was, where I think in the second half he started to call fouls a bit better, and even he settled down. Remember, refs are humans too, so he definitely had a slow start to this game. He settled down, so again, I feel complimentary today. I'll give him a compliment too. That said, Barcelona didn't help themselves at all. They were sloppy in possession, giving Eintracht Frankfurt opportunities in that first half. As I said, they survived. They get their goal in the second half, answering to an Eintracht Frankfurt goal. So Barcelona go into the second leg next week, 1-1 on aggregate, 1-1 where away goals don't matter. We're going to break this down more on the podcast tomorrow, as I said, and then it's Levante on the weekend, and I heard this guy named Ansu Fati, the number 10 for Barcelona, might return. And if he's available even 20 minutes next week against Eintracht Frankfurt at the Camp Nou, well, some fireworks could happen. Another reason why I'm not so worried just yet. Some more injuries against Levante, we'll talk again, but let's be positive here, Culés, as again, this wraps up another one of these headlines. And as always, until next time, Forza Barça.